The brain is not a projector, but a funnel. Brains avoid filters, immanence factories. They produce the inward torsion of subjectivity through a kind of causal obfuscation and insideness, whose only direct reference is itself, its backside unknowable, exactly what Zizek means by human ideality being an extension into a zone of non-being. Brains are the organ of time. In Hegel, the problem is never immediate sense certainty as such, but change within sense certainty. How now and the now I just used up to say it can possess the same non-conflictual immediacy, and how that opposition kickstarts the dialectic as thought's interminable negotiation with the universal. The problem of continuity is the problem of time, or rather, the problem of fluency, identity. Within time, consciousness cannot be reduced to a strictly functional definition, because so much of that function is phenomenally dependent. I do things based on how they appear to me in the moment, based on an immediacy that is contingent precisely on my brain's deep functioning remaining inaccessible to me. Metzinger's auto-epistemic closure: there are appearances, precisely, so long as I am not self-transparent. This occlusion defines the formal limits of what is available to my awareness at any given time, just as the structure and makeup of an eye defines its visual register. But a register never immanently available to that field except as the algebra of its content. My depths are only partially visible to me. Awake, I am an exile of my own void. In other words, subjectivity is a kind of pinhole, and intensity is always proportionate to the capacity for novel response. In other words, contra to Kant, appearances have causal power precisely in virtue of their status of being appearances, in actually appearing. Whitehead's souls are exactly this, a kernel of causa sui unpredictability that just is, the subject's first-person participation in time. To turn the other cheek means to have the degree of self-presence necessary to freeze the natural response in real time. Consciousness is the duplicity of the machine. If we hurt an animal, there is always an inner feeling adequate to the external displays of fear and pain that we are witnessing. Or, in Whiteheadian, external causation corresponds to an experience formulator. What Descartes ends up calling mechanical is really only how limited an animal's structures of inheritance really are, but in Whitehead this limitation, this predictability of response, does not preclude an inner sense, instead always already presupposes it. In other words, that even seemingly mechanical behaviors are performed and related to an effective center that is its own self-registrar. That animals, everything, really do suffer, as much as they look like they're suffering, that everything's life is as immediate as our own, and nature drowns in its insomnia. This is the essence of moral consciousness, the recognition of subjectivity as the uninvited guest of physiomotor functioning. In other words, as being's real-time participation itself. To say that being participates is also just to say that it is only ever we that participate. But in so doing we allude to the silence that allows our words. In so doing we deliver the silence back to itself, as the silence of death is coextensive with all speech. And the vacuum coextensive with downtown, the I automatically connotes the very field of its participation, what creates the very thing that it acts to recognize. As Atom masturbates being into his mouth, energy is divine semen, semen is petrified light, his emission immediately splits into Shu and Tevnut, the primordial dyad. The Derridine paradox of language, the idea that language thinking of the apria necessary to think, echoes the black miracle of Egyptian cosmogony. The One, in its essence, is officially into two. The One, in speaking itself, speaks its own heterogeneity with the void, falls into the net of a demiurgic logicity. Whatever occult law of creation demands too for ontological coherence, a need for consistency that Langen himself talks about in his own writings on creation. Realities boil out of the pleroma like froth. And it is only those universes whose membranes, logoi, don't pop like bubbles that stick around long enough to produce intelligent observers that can call them universes. Or, more radically, Langen's point is that this reality, this universe, is identical with the only syntax of intelligibility where reality, as such, Hegel's notion of the notion, is even intelligible in the first place. Langen's reality principle is an echo of Hegel's ontologization of Kant. The latter accuses Kant of inconsistency because any claim about noumena, what is intrinsically unknowable, must be necessarily asserted within the bounds of present knowledge. Just as Langen's principle states that any possible claim or description about what could be outside reality must be substantial enough to affect it, and hence intelligible enough to conform to it. The war in heaven was the war between universes, between ontologics, syntax trees in the deep, for the right to be that frame defined primarily as that which emerges out of a pre-ontological void. Like sperm, cosmoi raced to inseminate none. God was only one sperm among many, but his masterstroke was being autogenous, self-born. By being that which is, in the zero, the supreme title, and one no other can ever hope to usurp, for if it did it would only re-establish it. Life is a catalytic reaction, a microbe engineered to chew through diamond, i.e. the law that secured God's victory and doomed him to the monotony of light and dark. In the dawn of infinite possibility, this is what he made of it, actuality made retroactively possible by being actual, the essence whose essence is to exist. God.
You know, you blacks like yellow guys, you look all the same. They embraced me and they told me, you can call me nigger.